Hi, I'm Coach MK, founder of the Fitness Protection Program. I'm a run coach, not a life coach. We're never really talking about the running. Running is the tool. It's the conduit we use to examine the world we live in, as well as its impact on our own lives and the lives of the people around us. How we react to certain people and to certain stories tells us a lot about how we view ourselves. I'm committed to the thoughtful, intentional exploration of the importance of running so that no one discounts their own badassery, ever. Final note, this podcast is geared towards every runner who won't lose their home, livelihood, or health insurance if they show up to the corral with a hangover. Not that I'm encouraging you to do that, just saying. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the Fitness Protection Podcast.
Hello!
Hi, Coach Sarah. You're free at last. Free at last. Thank God Almighty.
This is my actual first day. This is Monday. As we record, this is Monday, August 19th, and this is my first day where my kid is in daycare and I am not at my office, and it is amazing. It has been an amazing day so far. I am so happy.
Yay! I'm so excited. I'm excited to have you here. I'm excited to know that I can bother you whenever I want and I'm not taking away from work time somewhere else. I can be like, oh, I have a question, or I have something that needs to happen. And it's like, you were just all me all the time. Yay!
Yeah, that's right. Oh, it's been such a great day. I got like a whole mantra recorded for tomorrow, first thing in the morning that never happens. I got an amazing breakfast sandwich at my favorite place. I rode my bike home and it was like, oh, it's only 11 o'clock. I have plenty of time to do yet more stuff before we record a podcast. Oh,
amazing.
God, it's so amazing. I love it. This is like the first day of the rest of my life. I'm so happy.
And I gotta say, it's kind of fun to see you still in workout gear. You really find out who you are when you don't have to go to the office anymore. It's do you still choose to say moisturize? Do you still get your eyebrows tweezed? Do you still tweeze them yourself? You never know. And then when you no longer have to worry about maintaining a certain look for a certain audience in a certain place, the things that fall to the wayside, that's really freeing. Yeah, I'm still in my jammies, whatever.
I still brush my teeth, so at least there's that.
That's good. Totally good.
Apparently, I still care about dental hygiene, which is a relief.
Well, I'm just saying, winning at life.
Winning at life. I feel like I'm winning at life. It should be noted that I'm not wearing the workout gear that I wore to run this morning because that would be disgusting. It was disgusting outside. And when I came in from a 40-minute run, it looked like I had gone running in the rain. I was so covered in sweat. It is gross in the Northeast, and all of you who are running up here, and probably other places too. I only know that all of my Northeast people on Strava are complaining about it. I think Amy Wilson posted a photo of her face with her run on Strava, and I was like, yup, that face. That's exactly how I feel right now. Oh my God. You guys, the summer running thing is hard, and I am so proud of all of you. I feel really cool. I feel cool that I've been running all summer pretty solidly, and the heat has been tough, but I've been doing it, and it makes me so proud to see that everyone else has been doing it. We don't always love it, but we're getting it done, and we have a safe space in Maintain and in Rebuild to be like, guys, this sucks right now. And everyone else is like, I know. And
it doesn't make you weak.
No,
it really doesn't. It's when the things that are happening right now are real. it is terrible. It's when you're breathing pea soup, when we don't have gills, when you feel like I could do better if I had gills out there. Yeah. That's not you being weak. That's not something that's wrong with you. And when I talk about conditioning or culture, it's we don't talk about forces. We talk about the response certain demographics have to the forces that are actually impacting them. Mm-hmm. And that's when we invalidate those forces or say, hey, you know what? That's not going to change. So you have to change. Are we doing more harm than good? I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously. And really taking stock of that, deciding to leave academia and do something different. It's been very, very eye-opening to kind of look around me and see oh, interesting. These are all the ways in which I've been thinking that I was a problem and everything else around me was just set in stone. There was no way I was going to change it. I was either going to have to get with it or I don't know what, just consider myself a failure for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because at some point, I feel like there's not a good broad understanding of how broken tenure track anything in academia actually is. There was a point when I first started business school that I mentioned to a professor very casually, I love this and I would love to be able to do this every day. I'm thinking of doing a PhD. And he was like, don't. Just, I'm telling you, don't. Even if someone else is paying for it and you think it might be fun, awesome, do it. But if you aren't fully funded and you don't have a big donor that's writing the check in for you, like, it's not going to be fun. And I got to tell you, if you're out of the job market for another 7 years pursuing a PhD, good luck finding a job using it. You're going to you're going to have to go back to what you were doing before. Odds of you getting a job in this are so tiny. And then talking to friends of mine who have been on the adjunct professor track, they're my age, right? They're not behind in any way. They did everything right. And they've been, struggling, applying, looking everywhere, trying to get a full-time tenured academia track. The problem is not them or the resume. The problem is a system that's churned out more people than it was ready to reabsorb, which had not been a problem until, say, the mid-90s, from what I understand.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, it's not that you just didn't wait long enough. I'd say congratulations for getting off the train after only, 3 years of stressing about it, 4 years of stressing about it, as opposed to a decade and saying, now I'm 41, I am dug in. If I turn away now, I don't know, how long can you be, I'm so close before you're just like, I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was kind of the big question that defined our whole lives for a pretty long time. And it's been 4 years since I graduated with my PhD, and
adjunct professors don't make a living wage. That's the other important thing.
Exactly.
You're working 80 hours a week. Your family is taking a hit. You're probably losing money on your job, especially if you have kids and there's childcare required. It's easy to be like, well, all women do this. It's like, but they don't do it for minimum wage, which is really what it works out to. And a lot of them are unpaid. Yeah. So you're basically helping someone in a tenured role keep their tenured role, doing all of their work while you'd get paid, minimum wage for it.
No, it's a really rough system, and my field has been shrinking for a while, and people aren't retiring, and when people do retire, their jobs are not, they're not getting approval to hire someone for that job. That's happening more and more and more. And my mother-in-law literally would call me when she learned that an Italian professor had died. This happened. An Italian professor, a very respected person, who I had met and whose work that I knew at a very respected university. He passed away. His obituary was in the Washington Post. My mother-in-law called me and she's like, so they're going to be posting his job soon, right? And I was like, God damn it. First, so many things. I mean, and this was it very much, she wanted so badly. She was just like, I just know that if the right opportunity comes along and Sarah's going to be there and they're just going to see how special she is and they're going to, and everything will be great. And that was one of the reasons why it was really hard to talk about. It was hard to talk about, especially with the people closest to me, because they were just like, just got to hang in there and the right thing will come along. And, you're so great. There's no way they won't see it. I heard that all the time. And
because what that doesn't take into account, it's wonderful that they support you. What's terrible is that no one sees it's not about you. It's about the broken system behind you. Like, you can be the best and still not win. And I know that really confuses people when we talk about capitalism and the worship of free markets, and that cream always rises to the top. And I think now we're having a very real conversation about privilege and how that isn't categorically true and never really has been. That was the stick they let us believe. Oh, you just didn't deserve it. If you'd stuck a little longer, if you worked a little harder, you would have everything you want, which, is some of the same things that you hear about weight loss, right? Like, you would have the perfect career if you just worked a little harder, and you could lose weight if you just did a little more work, as though everything is a function of more work. More work's the solution to every problem.
Totally.
And to me, that is inane.
Yeah, absolutely. And more work is not the same thing as smarter work. We obviously know that. But we really glorify more work, because at least if you're doing more work, then at least no one can call you lazy, right? And that's like the worst thing to be called in some ways. As long as everyone can see that, you are killing yourself to get this thing that everyone agrees we should all want, then, even if it's the wrong work that you're doing, or if it's actually too much work that's harming you, you're still a hard worker, and that's something that I've really come to realize that I absorbed pretty much whole cloth as a kid. And it can be very destructive. And I know that's what we're going to talk about today. And that's something that we're very critical of and that we want to really kind of look at differently.
And if you've seen some of the videos that I've been doing with my husband, those that are queued up for a fitness protection podcast will soon be migrated to and start to live in the Fitness Protection Program's YouTube channel. If you've been with us for a bit, part of like Sarah being absorbed fully into the company now, she's going to be taking over the Coached and Loved brand. In my brain, she is vice president of that brand, in charge of managing and growing that brand as best she can, while I work on the larger company and structure going forward. They look and feel a little different, but it's all coming from the same place. When I looked over time what had happened, having two distinct employers and two distinct demographics, I developed two distinct voices, one that I used in one crowd and one that I used in a separate crowd. I love both voices. I love both approaches, but I really need to kind of focus more on one if I really want fitness protection to grow the way that I want it to grow without alienating the people who have made it all happen. So from the get-go, Coach Sarah has been leading the way, and she's been doing an amazing job with it. So I will still be around. It's not like I'm disappearing, but she will be taking over the Coached and Loved weekly newsletter. And pretty soon there will be a fitness protection weekly newsletter that will look the same, but it'll be unquestionably MK, where I can do more of my coaching stuff. And the coaching stuff is really fun. Yeah. And not to say that others that, Coach and Love people don't appreciate it, but it's sort of, one is a firmer feel, and the other is a much softer feel, as I think is pretty obvious when you look at the two brands and insignias even next to each other. So to that end, there's no one more suited to carry on what I accidentally started than you. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Sarah, and it's always been Sarah. And I'm so thrilled that you're here, because when I think about my beautiful husband and the stories that he has told me over time, and how running in public to him felt like a public apology for being his size. He didn't want to run in the gym. No, he wanted the neighbors to see him running, to know that he was working on it, so he wouldn't have to, he wanted to battle that assumption by performing the attempts to lose weight. And that broke my heart. That was a decade ago. He did not say that in the most recent video, but that's why I've been asking him to talk a little bit more about what do we see when we look at a fat person, and what do we expect from a fat person. In the most recent video, he said something right before we recorded that I had never heard before. He told me he went into oil and gas because it was the only room he'd ever been in where all the senior people were fat. I mean, he was like, what was I supposed to do? A startup in Silicon Valley? Can you think of a single person in San Francisco that looks like me, much less in Silicon Valley? Let's think of, and he started naming names, the founders of Twitter, the founders of Snapchat, the founders of just one company after another. And he's like, even the ones that are close to our age, they're not fat. Like, how
no, they have their crazy,
and I totally get it.
What's that stuff called? Their crazy, Soylent ethos, that whole, Soylent craze with the Silicon Valley dudes. My husband was briefly like, and I was like, get the fuck away from me with that.
No.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, it was he was sort of intellectually curious about it, but I don't know, sometimes his intellectual curiosity goes too far over to now it's a thought experiment, and I'm like, no, I am not drinking shakes.
It's adding more structure.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about success, we talk about the people with laser-like vision who have been going in one direction since they were 6 years old, and how disciplined they are, which is code for how they structure themselves. And that structure shows up in all kinds of places. Once they become big and famous, they're sharing their diet tips. They're being like, I only eat within a 4-hour window each day so that I can work more. And again, I've just kind of creeps me out a little bit, because I don't know that more structure is or more discipline is more better, because the assumption it makes about the underlying person is pretty ugly. I hate the word willpower, and I hate the word accountability just as much. That's going to be the next Instagram post I make for fitness protection. That I think accountability it's just bollocks. It doesn't exist. It's not what most people need. If you aren't doing your runs, if you're here and you want to do something but you're not doing the work, it's not that you're lazy, and it's not that you need more accountability. You need more structure and more people looking over you. You need to opt into the panopticon so you'll behave differently knowing people are waiting for you. It's knowing that there's a safe space to do it with. For my husband, that can mean walking to a place where other fat people are, so that he doesn't otherized and can really focus on what he's doing rather than on how different he is from whatever the norm in that room happens to be. As a woman, it means that if I'm running at night, or if I'm running not in a highly populated place or very well lit place, that I feel safe. So having a run buddy is not about accountability as much as it is having a safe space to move through this world. And that really is what's held a lot of us back, more than I don't just have the drive or desire. I think most people do. That's the wrong, to come at the person without looking at the pressure. You're not going to get to a better result. You're just going to be shaming somebody.
I think that's totally right. And that really is, I think that's what sets you and us apart from so much of the fitness industry is the fact that like we look at accountability and say, is that really what it is? Is that really what's needed? Because I think you're looking at it wrong. And it's kind of like the lingua franca of everything in the wellness industry, the diet industry, the fitness industry. It's all about like no excuses and just show up. And like, look, I love Dez's keep showing up. I think that there are a lot of really great slogans that our, endurance athlete idols have come out with. And I think there are a lot of ways that people can take that and hear something along the lines of no excuses. Yeah. And it's very easy to go there in your head.
It is, because we've turned excuse into it's abuse. It's totally abusive the way that we throw it around this day and age. Like, why haven't you been running this week? I haven't had childcare. No excuses, just do it. Like, that's lazy management. That's lazy coaching. I'm probably not going to be able to run today precisely because I don't have childcare. My nanny got whatever my son had over the weekend. He had 106-degree fever and was vomiting, and then no one in the house managed to get it, but the nanny did. And I'm like, great, thanks. So not having help in the mornings and being really busy during the day and not necessarily having help in the evenings, that means I might not get to run. And does that mean I need more accountability? Where does the structure need to go? Like, what change can I make to possibly just put all 4 children in a jogging stroller? Like, really, in Denver? Like, come on. Like, you can shame me all you want. It's not going to change the outcome. Look at that limiting factor and you're going to get me towards the yes. But that's why I say, like, the current trend of saying that, well, I just need more structure and more discipline and more pressure. If I have the pressure of a big goal, then everything would come together. It comes from wanting something enough to make space in your life for it and to take all the little steps that are necessary. And that's a whole lot harder than it sounds. I'm here for that. I'm here to help people with that. I've got the nightly checklist PDF. If you've signed up for our newsletter or want to sign up for our newsletter, if you really hate the newsletter, that's totally cool. You can opt out. But if you go sign up for it, the link will be in the show notes. You can download our nightly checklist PDF of all the little habits that you need to consider in order to make a long-term running habit stick. Every time I've fallen out of the running habit, I have gone running back to these little things that have to happen, laying out my clothes the night before and making sure that double checking the alarm no matter what. Because there's so many little failure points that could cause the run not to happen. And when I've gone through the checklist, I know that the big ones, there may always be new ones, but then that's okay. Instead of beating yourself up, you add another to-do to the checklist. And for me, it's like, it's a good 3 in a bad period, 5 items that I have to do to make sure that I'm up and running the next morning. And if we talk about it in terms of willpower, as opposed to acknowledging that this is what could get in the way and cause it to go wrong, then we're really not being fair to the person. As someone with ADHD, I have a lot of fail-safes in my life to make sure that things get done, and they don't bother me. I don't see them as, if I let the world tell me that I was less than for needing them, I wouldn't get out the door each day. But the fact of the matter is, I've gone from a fairly humble background to doing really cool things and still continuing to do fairly cool things with 4 little children, precisely because I acknowledge my failure points and build around them rather than trying to forge ahead doing things the same way everybody else does, knowing that plan doesn't work for me. So if your fitness hasn't been working for you, it probably has nothing to do with your willpower or lack of accountability or the fact that you're a quitter or whatever, like the abusive nonsense they would throw your way. It's like, maybe we need to look at this a little bit differently, with a critical eye to, why isn't this getting done? And maybe there are just a couple of steps that would facilitate it, make it possible. And all of a sudden, like, your world is changed, as opposed to yet again waking up, not getting it done, and just feeling bad. I don't know. Like, who was it that said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and over and expecting a different response? That's exactly what a lot of us have been told to do. Just try harder next time. Do the same thing with a little more oomph. Once more with feeling. Feeling what? Shame? Yet again, what has shame ever helped anyone build or do or accomplish? Nothing. I mean, we're seeing exactly how messed up shame is and how it's messed up generations of people over time.
I'm pretty sure that quote is at least credited to Einstein, by the way, the insanity quote, doing the same thing and expecting different results. It's maybe one of those things where, like, he didn't actually say it, but everyone assumes there are a lot of Gandhi quotes that Gandhi didn't really say, but everyone thinks they're Gandhi. I don't know if that one's a true one or not, but if you go on the internet, that's who supposedly said it. I hear he was pretty smart.
Everything the internet says is true. It's fun. I remember when I was writing my thesis and I found out that I could not use internet sources yet. This was 2007. And there was, as a citation, as if I was putting up a link, it had to be to a journal or a paper. And so much of what I was doing were news stories that had been republished or repurposed on blogs. And blogs were not considered to be sources either, even if it was the blog of a respected author, like that had been fired for the position that he'd taken and hadn't been able to get anyone to publish his work or his investigation. So it's really interesting about when you think about gatekeepers and who gets to decide who is or what is official, which is kind of when you think about social media, some say it's a productivity time suck. And, I couldn't disagree more. It has democratized marketing in ways that Joy, what was her last name, Lamantia, could have only dreamed of in the 1990s. Right. So if you go, and there's a link in the show notes, like QVC allowed her to go on TV and sell her product herself. And then it was gangbusters. Yeah. So barriers to entry were really, really high. They were high AF. We like to pretend that markets are perfect. Cream always rises. It's just not true. We no longer need permission to create and sell, and we don't need permission to put ads out there. Just look at all the things that have gone viral or spawned the growth of small businesses and ideas like the Miracle Mop. So sure, social media can be terrible, but this notion that it's categorically bad or categorically wrong or has no productive use in society is disingenuous, especially coming from us since our company is entirely possible due to self-created media and promoted through the likes of social media. So this is also allowed the spread of bad ideas as well, which is what academia tried to exclude back in 2007 when it said, no, I don't care who wrote the blog. If it's only published on a blog, then it's not a publication. So this is where it intersects with running with weight loss. There are all kinds of folks, specifically folks who think they lack willpower. They use social media to keep them on target, entering the panopticon, to use your word again, hoping that being watched will actually change their behavior or keep them on track.
Nice way to bring that one back in. Good call back to last week.
I'm trying. Oh God, now I'm going to have to work in lingua franca next week because to me, that's a sweater company in New York.
I had no idea it was a sweater.
I was like, don't you say anything about lingua franca. I love them.
I had no idea it was a sweater company. That's amazing. I'm going to go look them up now.
Oh my gosh.
Good.
That's so funny. Yeah, okay. You'll like them. It's a very resistance based.
I definitely need to replace some of my super wordy words from their most highbrow meaning to their most actually I really just want a sweater kind of meaning. That sounds right about where I'm at right now.
I'm just saying, you in the real world now, Sarah. Yeah. You are out of academia where everything is going to come down a notch. You don't have to try to bring it there. It's just going to get there real quick. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Oh my gosh. You're going to be tricking people real soon and then they will never know that you were from Harvard was where you came from.
Especially when our Wayfinder gets me my not Harvard t-shirt. I'm just going to walk around wearing that. And then I'll be like, oh yeah, she's totally not from Harvard. See, look, it's right there on her shirt. Good. We're good. We can act our...
Proof on the shirt. And then the tattoo on your forearm. Oh my gosh. Well, when it comes to tricking people, I don't know how well that works, but there's a little thrill that comes along with it, a dopamine rush in your brain for knowing that you pulled it off when you take the photo and put it on Strava. And then drive home and forget to turn your watch off so it looks like you ran really, really fast or whatever. The first time you sort of pull it off or get away with it and no one says anything to you, then all of a sudden it's a slippery slope from doing the work and getting the feedback to posting the photo and getting the same feedback effectively for less work to falling off the wagon completely. And then you're playing a completely different game. But I got to tell you that none of this is new. Absolutely none of it. Do you remember that movie Parenthood? I mean, it was probably made before you were born. 1989.
No, excuse me. I was born before 1989. I will not be age discriminated against.
I'm not discriminating against you. I'm making fun of you.
I think I know of the movie. I definitely have not seen it. I like to think of myself as being born in the 80s because I was, but I was.
You haven't seen it?
No, I haven't seen it.
It's the best movie ever.
I'll put it on the list.
It is seriously one of my top 5s. There are 5 movies I go back to that there's nothing on. I don't know what I want to watch. Parenthood is the top of the list.
I'll go back and watch it. That sounds good. The last movie recommendation I took from you was Drop Dead Gorgeous, and that was a huge mega hit. Even with me and my husband, we both laughed out loud the entire time. It was amazing. So I'll definitely
Oh my gosh, I love that movie
good.
so much.
It's so good.
Parenthood is really good too, and it's because it still feels really relatable, and it does not feel aged. Baby Boom is much more depressing. That was 1983, I think, and what's depressing there is that it except for the haircuts and the outfits, it could still be today. Something happened, by the way, with fashion between 1983, which feels really outdated, versus 1989, which could have been yesterday. But if you go back and watch that movie, there's a scene, and I remember this so clearly. Rick Moranis plays someone who is determined to foster a genius out of his child, and they are always they don't have play dates, they have productive playtime. And there's this scene where she's had a fight with her husband because he controls everything, and he's really controlling and kind of a bully in wanting the best for everyone, and doesn't really see how it's gone from helping her sort of get her act together to controlling every aspect of their entire house, and she hates it and she's ready to leave him. So she's gone to work out or something, some approved activity on of betterment on his short list of things that she can do away from him, and then comes back and is after a fight, it's starts stuffing her face with candy that had been hidden under the bed, and she just gives him a very smug look as she takes a big bite. Well, I'll show you. And I'm ooh, that moment just made me cringe. That food was the only thing, and hiding in the thrill of it was the one thing that she had some sort of control over. And that's what it was there for. And I think that definitely resonated for me in my household too. Other things that we would have seen in Fried Green Tomatoes, another terrific movie.
Right,
Kathy Bates' character.
Yes. Love that one.
So there's a scene, and this is in the show notes as well, where she is leaving a grocery store with a bag full of food, which always makes me think of my husband saying he has to perform working on his fatness in public. She is walking out with a big bag of groceries, and someone calls her a fat cow and tells her that what she needs is less food. Instead of apologizing for running into her, he bullies her, and she goes and sits in her car and starts crying into the junk food that she's eating. These women didn't lack willpower. They lacked agency and control in their own lives. Social media could have been the tool back then to reassert some control, to connect them to each other, to other people with having the same expectations. The people who need social media the most are the most vulnerable, and the people who tend to talk it down the most are some of the most privileged, and I don't know that anyone else is really calling that dynamic out. But it makes me furious when people poo-poo on social media and say, well, everyone needs to stay off it. I'm well, that's because you didn't get to approve their message. Really sorry. I stand by it. I've said it before. Sue Bird said it the first time, and I'll say it again. Social media is an amplifier. And she said at the MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference that she won a national championship before social media, and she won a national championship afterwards. And she's that win was better with it, but the losses have been harder after it as well. So then once upon a time, that amplifier lay in the hands of a select few gatekeepers, like Howard Stern, he was a gatekeeper on his local radio show, and who he chose to let through the gate just horrified people, but it really broadened the scope of what was accessible and what was acceptable at the time. You'd have your local reporter or your local news anchor. Those people had a lot of power, and you really had to perform well in a small market to gain access to a larger platform. So those gatekeepers could make or break you. And now we can blow the doors and go right by them at every turn. So disordered behavior really isn't new. The incentives have not changed. Producers have always been trash, only caring about ratings. What's different is that anyone can now be a production manager or showrunner. We have the tools for success, failure, and production management right here in our own hands now. So with all that said, The Biggest Loser was fat-shaming garbage and needs to be forgotten completely. The things it did to create terrific television and tell great stories to draw 8 million viewers night after night and more, and consistently for over 16 years, it tore its contestants apart and, in my humble opinion, ruined at least 2 generations who already felt like they lacked agency and control. And now this relationship that they had to food, their outlet, was now something that they felt guilty about. We've taken away one coping mechanism and not replaced it with anything positive.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I had all of these. I had really bad feelings about that show when it first came out. I never watched really any reality shows, especially in that era, because I didn't really watch much TV anyway. But I really felt like when I read Roxane Gay's chapter in her book Hunger, where she talks about Biggest Loser, that was kind of the framing of it that really got to me and really made me say, oh, this is what I'm so angry about that show. Because she talks about about the moment, and I'm not sure which season this was, and of course I'm not quoting directly from the book because this just came into my head just now, but that's what I love about our podcast. You say things, and things, even if I've read all of your notes ahead of time, I know what we're going to talk about. There are things in the way you say something and the way your face looks when you're saying it that make me think of something that I hadn't thought of before. So Roxane Gay talks about this one season where there's a woman who loses so much weight that when she's revealed at the end, she is like tiny, and she's so thin. She is so reduced that it's like horrifying to everyone. And I actually remember when this happened, there was like a video that went around of Jillian Michaels' face, like looking at her. And then, you know, she was on talk shows and it was like, oh my God, she won. And she won by playing their game too well. And she crossed a line where all of a sudden everyone no longer approved. Like somewhere she crossed a line, somewhere her body became no longer acceptable. Again, on the other side of this, you know, random spectrum where everyone is constantly moving the goalposts and no one really understands how it works. And so what it really becomes about is policing other people's bodies, you know? And it's all about controlling the rules and saying who wins and who loses, and you also get to say when someone has lost too much, and it seems, you know, pretty arbitrary and unfair in the moment. All of a sudden, like she's followed your rules so well that you're going to disapprove of her on the other end and ridicule her on the other end and pathologize her on your other end. Even then she loses, exactly. And she's being pathologized and ridiculed kind of no matter what she does, because that's what she became known for. She became like, oh my God, like what have you done to yourself? She like anyway.
The same thing that was everybody else was doing in that house. And it's not like she hadn't been seen. They had weekly weigh-ins on national television.
How did this sneak up on anybody?
I still don't completely... Yeah. Yeah. How many people saw her and thought she was fine, or was like, how many producers, showrunners were like, yay, we're totally going to win this. And then only to be like gobsmacked. And turn on her too. I imagine her walking off the stage, all these people going, oh yeah, well, you do look a little too thin, you know, whereas maybe the minutes before that, it wasn't bad until the collective reaction was bad. And then she's bad, even though she's done everything she was supposed to do. That sounds like a familiar fit paradigm. Speak up. We want everybody to speak up. Did you mean me? Yeah. No, not you, MK. How did you not know that we clearly did not mean you?
Ugh. There is absolutely thin privilege, and we've talked about this, and I'm sure, you know, we'll come back and cover it again. I've really been, this series that we've done on body image has been really eye-opening for me, and I've heard a lot of really great reactions from our listeners too about these discussions we've been having, and you know, we realize that when we're talking about this show, and when we're talking of like someone who loses too much weight, there is such a thing as thin privilege, but there is also absolutely, and MK has talked about this because you've experienced this, the way people judge your body when they think you're too thin. It is also harmful. And the common denominator, I think, to trying to judge people's bodies and police people's bodies on both ends of this spectrum is that, you know, your body is not your own, and that commenting on your body becomes okay. You know, suggesting that there's something that needs to change about your body becomes okay. And to me, that is just never okay. And that's something that, you know, raising my daughter in this world, that is going to be a thing in our house that I will not tolerate, is people making comments about other people's bodies in any way. That's just not okay to do.
And to be really clear, like what an example of thin privilege is, it's the things you don't have to think about when you are a size that is within a range that is deemed acceptable or normal. To give two tangible examples from my life, one of them is just going out to dinner. The last time you went out to dinner and you decided like where you truly want to go, then there's a lot of thin privilege in that. The conversation that a lot of folks have to have is, well, okay, we got to go somewhere that has a lot of booths because I don't fit in the chairs. And if they have bar stools, are they actual stools? Because those little hipster bar stools, like it's trendier and trendier. The more trendy the restaurant, the smaller the space for each individual human tends to be. So, you know, luckily I love steak and I love seafood, but we end up in a lot of like old school, old style steak and seafood places because they're not very well lit. They're kind of dark. They have lots of booths, and there won't be anyone paying attention to what we order or giving us funny like looks across the room because you can't actually see us in the booth over in the corner. When you can just go anywhere you want to go and not have to think about these things, that's thin privilege. Another example is when you fly. Do you have to carry one complete change of clothes in your carry-on because you can't be sure that where you are going will have appropriate dress for whatever you're doing if your luggage is lost. So if you show up somewhere and we'll always have one suit in our carry-on so that if it, say you're flying across the country for a really important work event, at least you've got one suit to get. If they lose your liability is limited if your luggage is lost because you can't just go anywhere and buy replacement clothes, especially really nice replacement clothes.
Yeah.
So those are just a couple of examples of thin privilege. Being able to walk into a store and buy clothes and not have to worry about whether or not they'll have your size, that's thin privilege.
Absolutely.
It's not about you feeling guilty about not having to think this way. It's rather just being aware of what other people have to do so that you don't in some way invalidate their journey or their reality by being well, if you just ate a little bit less, it'd be fine. If you had a little more willpower, oh, wait, no, you're garbage. But wrong answer.
Yeah. Yeah, and that you reminded me of a time in high school when we ordered sweatpants for my class and we were going to get cute things written on the butt because it was the early aughts and that's when cute things written on the butt was the lingua franca of the high school set, may I say. And yeah, we ordered them from a place in Newton that made, custom sports stuff. And the extra larges were I didn't know if they were going to fit me and they were only going to order 2 extra larges because I went to a school with a lot of stuff, including eating disorders and very, very much scorekeeping of who was fat and who was not and things like that. This was something that everyone was acutely aware of. And so, there were only so many people in my high school class of 50 that were potentially going to need an extra large. So, we're only going to order a couple of those and who gets the extra larges when they come, It might be you, it might not.
That's
and this was I remember feeling anxious about this. What will I do if the extra larges don't fit me? What will people say? Because they're going to be paying attention. This is not just in my head. And then where will I go from there? What if I'm the only one that doesn't have a pair of cute sweatpants with things written on the butt that fits?
That's why I haven't released pants yet in the Threadless shop. They only offer up to 2X.
Thank you for that. Because, custom pants are really hard. They are they're really hard to get to fit well. And I think sort of expecting that people are just going to be oh, okay, well, I can trust this random internet brand to kind of sort of fit me. That's also a little bit of thin privilege. I know that you're very conscious of that. And then look, I have more thin privilege now than I used to, certainly, but I feel very tentative about buying things online, especially pants. I will not do it except from a brand that I 100% trust. And yeah, Threadless is, no offense, but it's not there. Pants are hard.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I completely get it. Pants are hard. They don't offer that many options, but the few that they have, I have not yet turned on. Even with the other shops that I've been playing around with, I have not seen, if we order them in advance, that's one thing, but we don't have the cash to do that. I don't have the ability to manage inventory as well. So if I can't, there are a couple of toggles that I'm we're going to stick with t-shirts and hats for now, because at least the t-shirts, they go up to 5X in at least a couple of sizes, but I ordered a bunch at first. Because you know how sensitive we can tend to be. I'm usually a 6, but that one thing that you buy that only a size 10 fits you makes you really anxious. What happened? That's amplified the larger you are. So I wanted to make sure that the 2XLs I got my husband fit 2XLs and he didn't need, say, a 4 or 5XL. Because if that had been the case, I probably wouldn't be selling merchandise at all. I'd be here are your water bottles. You can get a keychain and a hat. Yay! I would have stopped there. So if it doesn't pass, and I have one other client, I don't have permission to say her name, but I adore her and I wanted to make sure that the shirts fit her before. And so once that test was passed, I'm if anything is still too big on someone, we don't have small enough sizes, I'll cross that bridge when we get there. But that's not the usual issue. I remember being somewhere and being told as I showed up after I'd had one of my kids that this is the shirt you're going to have to wear all weekend while you work. And it was an extra large and it didn't fit. It was too small. And I felt really awkward sitting there in that shirt. And I hated every minute of it and was if I feel this way in an extra large and I'm bigger than my usual, but I am not fat. that's got to be horrifying for everybody else. So merchandise is a really tough thing to get right. When you're starting out like we are and you're reliant on working with dropship companies, all I can do is pressure my dropshippers to say, hey, I want pants, but you need bigger sizes. I want this. I want this. I want this. Like they only just got technical shirts in the store and they're available on the website, but with they don't have white. They don't have colors that a very wide range yet. But so I'm continuing to pressure people behind the scenes so we can do what I think is the right thing to do. But I don't know that I would be cognizant of any of this on the level that I am if I hadn't watched my husband go through it as many times as we have over the course of our marriage, where he buys a shirt and it shows up and it doesn't fit and he's too embarrassed to say anything about it. Or he says like, oh, I only need to lose 5 pounds before it fits. And so it sits in a closet as a constant reminder of quote unquote failure to him. And that just breaks my heart because it's not the way things, it's not what I want for him, and I want better for my clients too. So I've said this before that on multiple occasions, Biggest Loser had a huge measurable impact on my life in general, and that it still kind of reverberates through society now that I'm a coach. Like the two things that the Biggest Loser celebrated that I think are completely unrealistic for most people, especially me, is the type of meal preparation that they would do in the house. I just never had the time or the availability of super duper fresh produce, because fresh produce goes bad after a day or two. So that means like I need to live near or walk past a grocery store that is open early and late due to my hours. And that was not part of my existence until maybe 2011. No, not even. 2013 was the first time I lived walking distance to a grocery store that was convenient and not horrifying. So there's a lot of privilege baked into the things that they advise people to do, and they presenting it as, oh, it's just a little more work. Like, no, that's not just a little more work. Like, you elitist piece of garbage. But the second thing is this whole couched marathon thing. I didn't meet that many marathoners prior to 2007. And I've said before that when I came back to the States, something had changed that I didn't know what. All of a sudden, all anyone could talk about was Boston. And had I run it? Oh, you're a runner. Have you run Boston? When I left the United States, at least in the circles that I'd been running in, people made fun of Boston. But that's because these people were trying to qualify for the trials still. And that's neither here nor there. Just like running Boston wasn't necessarily goals for them. But something shifted between 2000 when I left, and I was still being like, oh, Boston? No, not me. No. I'm a real runner. I don't care about Boston. Like that was the cool cred, the cool card that I would play. And then 2007, I'm not a real runner because I haven't run Boston, or people thinking that they aren't real runners because they haven't qualified yet. And I'm like, that is such a huge change from it being embarrassing that you care about it or that you have to work for that number. Like, if you're not working for that number, then you clearly aren't working hard enough. It's been a total mental shift, and I blame the Biggest Loser for that, because this was the first time I saw people encouraged by anyone to train for a marathon. With big pressure comes big commitment. You're likely to do it, especially now that you're in the Panopticon and you're being watched by 8 million viewers every Monday night. Just horrifyingly bad ideas. It's hard to explain like why that's such a bad idea. It's like you need to be, every single book on running ever written on marathoning specifically will tell you that you need to be running consistently 3 to 5 miles a day, at least 5 days a week for no less than a year before you start ramping up into marathon training. And I agree with that. When I came to realize is that is not what people do. And until I can change the mentality, then I need to have a way to kind of get them to the start line without killing themselves in the process. Because it's like, oh, but you can't train for a marathon without a tempo run. Yes, you can. You can't train for a marathon without hill work. Yes, you can. You can do all kinds of things that are smart and make sense and get you to where you want to go. Like, the demands of the event really have not changed, but the people demanding to be part of the event have changed. So I really feel strongly that the guidelines need to change in tandem. And for all of this, I blame the Biggest Loser. RRCA has done a wonderful job in communicating to coaches what they need to do and how they need to look at it and what their scope is. And running is a specialty type of fitness. Like, you just don't find a whole lot of coaches that want to use running in a really positive way to get people towards fitness. Or when you do, some of the advice that's given, it still smacks of the Biggest Loser to me in a way that makes my heart ache.
Yeah, I totally see. This is not a Harvard thing. This is a listening to too much 538 podcast thing, but it's like moving the Overton, it's moved the Overton window, I think, which is to say it's, sort of changed the parameters of what seems like kind of normal to this, like, no pain, no gain, no excuses, blah, blah, blah. And that's why I think that bleeds into so much of, fitness culture, diet culture, just the stuff that we sort of live and breathe and don't really think about or interrogate.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause it's like, how do you convince somebody that you're not lazy? You can't. It's like one of the reasons I've said this before, our justice system is wonky. If you've ever been in it, it doesn't feel like a justice system. But when you start from a presumption of innocence to and prove guilt, that is such a fair place to start. Because when the onus is on you to prove that you are not something, it's impossible. You will never meet that standard because confirmation bias is rampant. Well, like some of the things that we were seeing were just horrifying because it was all predicated on the assumption that these people were fat because they were losers. The biggest loser, like, come on, like even the title. God. And there can only be one winner and everyone else is still a loser. But like it just that grates me. So if you're going to bring it back, if you must, could just start with a different name. Like, cause everything that's all of the connotations that are baked into that phrase are all the assumptions are that there's something deficient or wrong with these people that they need to be fixed or saved through weight loss. And it's just, bleh. So with like, we knew on some level, but when it came out, like this was the same time. Yeah, it's edited to bits, but no one really cared. Everybody pretended it was real, just like Survivor or The Hills. I love The Hills, but that stuff was fake, y'all. It was so fake. Off-screen, what you weren't seeing was even worse. Producers were accused of giving the magic skinny pill, my beloved Adderall, to contestants to accelerate weight loss, or going to see doctors to get scripts. And I don't know what doctor. I hope they were all lost their licenses. But who would do that if you're trying? Like even the times that I have mentioned my weight bothering me based on gaining too much, 30 pounds in 3 weeks is a whole lot of weight. But like my therapist picks up on that too. Like, are you still blaming the weight? She's always so quick to be like really certain that I don't have weight issues as I get ready to go back on Adderall. And it's really horrifying to me that people who are actively participating in this show aren't being held to that same standard. Like, this is not who you give this to. You give it to people who actually have the diagnosis that need this to function. It's not the magic skinny pill, and treating it as such is just it's disordered, and it's terrifying to me.
Yeah.
So
it's really interesting for me to listen to you talk about it because I avoided it like the plague. I could not watch it. It was so triggering to me. I could not do it. I have never watched an episode of this show. I've seen the clips. I watched a clip of Jillian Michaels' face when that woman who lost too much weight, revealed herself. But I couldn't, when people started talking about it, I would just kind of tune out. I could never really engage with it. I think it appeared at a time where I had lost a lot of weight. So there was part of me that wanted to feel kind of like superior about that. Like, well, there for the grace of God go I in some ways, which is not a nice feeling to have. Like, oh, thank God I'm not one of the people on this show there. But that was definitely in me. I mean, I was so insecure about gaining the weight back someday. I clung to this notion of like, well, phew, I'm in this, what people are giving me all this positive reinforcement. I'm good. But what if I'm not good forever? Like, what if, who knows what can happen? And so it was a place that I could not go without getting really scared. And the way the viewers were being encouraged to look at these people and judge them and look at them the way I was looking at them, as like cautionary tales. It was horrifying to me. And so I really couldn't engage with it. And the fact that they're bringing it back is, I honestly haven't engaged very much with that discourse either, because it makes me sad, and I want to believe so much that we don't need this anymore, and that people aren't entertained by this.
Well, I've been worried about you. This is the quietest you've probably ever been on any podcast we have ever recorded. And I know it's not like lack of preparation or total like Harvard relaxation from just not like, okay, this is Sarah. She's actually a quiet human now that she's not like having to be all anxious and worried at Harvard anymore. But I just want to make sure this subject matter, because weight is so touchy and it's so difficult, and we're told that we have to care. But if you care too much, trying to find that window between caring and not caring enough and caring too much, it can be so narrow, and it varies from person to person, and it's performative, and it's something that we have to navigate, because though as a society we're just not there yet to where you can just be like, you want to eat that, fine, cool, whatever. I know that I have watched your relationship to food change over the time that I've known you, and I've watched your relationship to running change as well. And to know that you just casually went to a barbecue last night and you talked about a cake coming into your house, and with no connective tissue between the two, it was a totally separate thought. And I don't think that would have been the case in 2016 when you were like, oh yeah, we picked up a cake for Tristan and blah, blah, blah. And it was just sort of a side note that had nothing to do with the 50 miles that you would run or your run the next day. It was totally, all of these things are now kind of, I would say, appropriately placed in your brain, as opposed to, well, thank God I ran all this so I can finally finally eat the cake.
Only,
you know
only
what I mean?
parties
Like,
on long run days.
the...
Only parties on long run days. That was me for a long time. Yeah. It was really tough, and there were very few people that I could talk to about it. I was lucky to have a couple. My brother was a person who understood, I think partly because of what he went through with light weight rowing and having to make weight and stuff. Like he got that having a fucked up relationship to food was something that was not my fault. And I felt like he was a safe person to talk to about it. My parents, no, never. You know, I think once I lost weight in between my freshman and sophomore years of college, they were like, good. Okay. So we're good. Everything's fine. Great job. You know, and I wanted to be fine. I wanted to be like, oh no, I'm great. I can look at all of this and be completely sane about it. And of course I can look at the number on the scale when I go to my doctor's appointment and not be triggered by it. Guys, by the way, I have a physical tomorrow morning, and I'm sure that I will do what I do every time, which is be like, please don't tell me how much I weigh. I can't do it. I can't look at it. And now, I think you said this to me at one point. Now I can see that as like, okay, well that's self-care. That's me saying, I know that this isn't information that I can use or that is going to, like, I don't see what good can come of it. They need the information. They can have it. They'll tell me if there's a problem. Oh, please God, let there not be a problem. But these are still things that I feel very grateful for where I am now compared to where I was 3 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. But it's hard. It's really hard.
I want to throw this out there too. If they talk to you about BMI and I keep saying it's nothing but a number, I'm 5'5.5". Proud of that half. It's never going away. I weigh 150-ish pounds, and I have never, ever been within my BMI band. Like at my thinnest, when I was 128 pounds, I was still on the higher end of it because what's considered an ideal weight for my height does not take my body type, puts on muscle really easily into account. And so, like, if I don't fit the BMI measurement, then it shouldn't say anything about you or anyone else in our programs if they don't. Like, guess what? This is a problem we share. Like, regardless of the number, like, that I just said, if that's triggering to you, I apologize. But just know this, at 5'5.5", 150 is, 128 was too much. 150 is definitely too much. So instead of like feeling bad about it, just be like, just this some bullshit standards. How dare you hold me to this, whatever. So I know there's always a part of you that will kind of hurt until that part is dead and gone. And it's going to take a while. Remember, like 33 years of conditioning doesn't fall away overnight, and that's okay. Just protect yourself from it, because this is one aspect where the world hasn't changed yet. And the person who has been tasked with collecting that is a nurse, and nurses are wonderful. Please don't beat up on nurses. It's not their fault. They don't get to set the standards. But when you get in there with the doctor, don't beat up on the doctor either. Insurance requires it. Like, this system is so deeply entrenched, it's not going to change overnight. I don't know where we need to start beating up first, which is why I'm like, let's just talk about it and then start to kind of figure it out, because I think there are a whole lot of people that want to do a whole lot of good. But for, a long time, women weren't allowed to participate in any distance longer than 800 because they thought our uterus might fall out, because we didn't have proof that it wouldn't fall out. I think there was a lot of misogyny there. Absolutely. Like, the first time women weren't allowed to participate in the Olympic marathon until 1984. 1984! Come on. By then we should know that uteruses don't just randomly fall out. Like, we would not have, if that was true, we would not have needed Roe versus Wade. We would have had some very strange run clubs. Quite frankly.
Uterus catchers.
It's like, well, I don't want to... The uterus catchers. Planned Parenthood wouldn't exist. There have been whole conversations, like political conversations we could have sidestepped if we knew exactly how to make our uterus fall out. But, masters running clubs would be really interesting too. But I digress. That's going down like a rabbit hole we probably don't need to touch. But I say that only to say that, like, medicine is improving, but it's still, even where we are now, is predicated a lot upon a lot of beliefs that we now realize, like, oh, I can't believe medicine ever thought that. And, like, the next one to go, I'm hoping, will be that overweight or over your BMI, any percentage over your BMI, is dangerous. We had been told that my father's heart attack was preventable if he had weighed less than 350 pounds, if he had not been as stressed out, if he had been, if, then he wouldn't have had the heart attack, and my family would not have been, turned upside down as a result. So there was a period when I worried about a lot of things as pertaining to my husband, and this was the easiest one to talk about. And he always came back with, but my doctor says I'm healthy. If I'm getting a clean bill of health every year, this is not the thing to worry about. And I'm like, well, we're going to have a much harder conversation then about these 2 or 3 other things that are bothering me, but sure. And finally getting to the point where we can put that aside. He's still here and he's still healthy. Maybe there's a lot of fat phobia built into medicine too, maybe more than we had even when it came to misogyny.
Yeah, Before we get off this and get back to The Biggest Loser, I have to tell this story. This was just this past weekend, and a close member of my family who's a doctor and whose opinion has mattered a lot to me over the years was telling a story about going to pick up lobsters and made a comment about someone with a very, these are her words, elevated BMI who was struggling to get down the ramp with his thing. He was picking up 65 lobsters. Well, picking up 65 lobsters, that sounds hard to carry for anybody. And
I want to be friends with that
seriously,
guy. That's
like, can I come?
Think. I want to be friends with that guy. He's having a party.
Can I have 2 of those? Thank you.
Right?
And, like, she said that, and I kind of, like, had to take a deep breath. And my 13-year-old brother said, I was gonna, like, conceal who said this, but it's hopeless anyway. I guess I sort of fucked that up. My 13-year-old brother said, "What's BMI again?" And she said, "Body mass index." And then I said, this was the one thing that I could not say. Said, which, by the way, everyone agrees is a very poor indicator of overall health. And she said, well, I wasn't commenting on his health. I was commenting on his size. And I was like, yeah, really?
Whoa.
Never would have guessed. Congratulations
you.
On not just calling him fat. You're so nice. Yeah, and it like really got to me. It really, really got to me. And my husband kind of got in there and changed the subject to make it about like made some comment about bodybuilders, because he saw all of this coming kind of a mile away and was just kind of like, all right, we're taking a deep breath. Because there are certain conversations in certain company that we know it's what good can possibly come of it. I am glad that I said something, especially in the presence of a 13-year-old who matters to me, and my daughter who also matters to me, who doesn't, is not necessarily picking up on things as subtle as someone saying elevated BMI as opposed to saying fat in a disapproving tone. But it's just so hard to hear those things, and yet to know that if I were to say, hey, that really hurt my feelings, then it'd be like, well, you're too sensitive. Why are you making this all like, I wasn't talking about you. Why would you be... Why would that hurt your feelings? They're all the plausible deniability that it's wrapped in. Like, of course I wasn't saying that. Well, yeah, you were. And yeah, it comes on top of years of being kind of like quietly disapproving, but never rising to the level of criticizing when I had an elevated BMI. And who knows what to think of it now? I have no idea. But then all of the really positive reinforcement that came with losing a lot of weight in a relatively short period of time. There's just that, like, all of that stuff is up in there. And just because people don't get in big screaming fights about it in my family doesn't mean that hurtful things aren't said and that people aren't, thinking things that honestly, I do wish sometimes that we could talk about them, and that it were a kind of place where I could be like, hey, I need to tell you that it makes me feel bad when you say that. Maybe someday I'll get there.
Because I look at you and all I can see is like, you're the healthiest you've ever been since I've known you, where I feel like I see you glowing. I see you owning what you're doing. I see you confident. I see you talking about food, not in hushed or scared terms. I see you excited that you ran 5 days a week, sometimes twice, most of the time twice, last week, and that you still have energy to boot. I just see you coming into your own, and it's such a beautiful picture of health. And it has nothing to do with your weight. I don't know what you weigh now versus what you've ever weighed, and I don't really care. Yeah. I'm not interested in that. When that is the one number, the one data point that we get wrapped around, we miss the bigger picture, which is that, you're kicking ass. You're doing amazing things. And to focus on a weight number and let that invalidate the balance and the mental and physical health that you have right now, as well as the lack of stress and the utter happiness, that is a lazy fucking analysis. I don't care what degrees you have. But if that is your starting point, you're missing the point.
And the people, I think, who really know me and pay attention see exactly what you see. And that makes me really happy. It makes me really happy when someone tells me hey, you look really great. And I know that they're not talking about my weight, because that it hasn't changed very much. But I think that I look really good too. I like the way I look in the strength videos. I do strength videos live on Facebook every day in tiny shorts and a tank top in 2 different Facebook groups. That is it's inconceivable to me. I would not.
You would not have done that in 2016.
No, I definitely would not have. And there was a period in 2016 when I definitely weighed less than I do now. Again, ballparky, I'm pretty sure. Because I haven't weighed myself in a pretty long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. but it has nothing to do with that. It's so many other things. And those are kind of the things that I wish people who are kind of focused on the numbers and the BMI and stuff, I wish that they were able to see what you see and what people who are paying attention can see and what I see on it, because I see it too. And it makes me really happy to be able to see it and to not be like, talking myself into feeling good about it. It's really there. It's real.
Well, what's hard is standing in a room full of people, and I know this because I've been there on different levels at different times for different reasons, and saying, actually, this is the best I've ever felt, and I think it's really sad that you've seen me for so long and you don't see it, but let me tell you how good it is to be doing what I'm doing right now, and then just let it all come out. And instead of sort of defending yourself against whatever they threw out, like just really let your perspective shine. And that's the fastest way to own a conversation. From someone that's not afraid to use profanity, who's not afraid to yell, who's not afraid to take up all the space in the room like gas. I can tell you that happiness and being really true about it and saying, let me tell you why this hurts, because this is what I was feeling before you opened your mouth and pointed out this one thing that you thought was negative. That is usually where the change comes from. Or at least they'll keep their mouth shut around you. You can't help what people do when you leave their presence, but you can make sure that they know where the lines are so that when they are crossed in your presence, you don't have to go MK on them to get them to step, take 2 steps back.
Yeah, what you just said reminds me of that Laura Lippman essay that you posted to Facebook last week that oh my gosh, I just, that was amazing. And I loved seeing how many people commented on it and loved it. But when she's like, actually, I really love the way I look. That's like, oh, yes. I bookmarked that in my brain and in my browser, and I'm going to reread it a whole bunch because that resonated with a lot of us, I think.
I loved reading that. Yeah. I hope that it doesn't, most of us are able to break down some of these ugly thoughts that have been embedded in our brains and to make change to start enjoying things before we turn 60. Like, I mean, if you're here at 33, imagine how good you're going to feel at 60. Yay! Yeah. But I know that there's hope in the world yet, and I love social media for it because I saw it on social media first. And I don't know if anyone's going to say it on TV. Oprah now backs Weight Watchers and financially. And so you're going up against Oprah. But people are going to do that on social media. So seeing the backlash to the Weight Watchers app for children has been so soul affirming. Like, it's not just me calling out this is garbage. This is nutritionists everywhere calling this out as garbage. And I understand what Weight Watchers was created to do. We weren't ready to combat culture together way back when. And so instead it came out to facilitate something that is in fact very, very, very difficult. But metabolic change is very difficult. And the reason that systems cannot be stuck to in the long term is because they are based on restriction. And I say this again as someone with an autoimmune disorder that has a medically restricted diet. And for the first year, it was maddening for my roommates. Like, why just don't eat it? It makes you sick. I'm like, but it's everywhere and I miss it and I'm hungry. And it took 18 months to fully adopt the mindset required to thrive on the diet. And now it's second nature to me, but it took a really long time, really long time. So if you don't have, and not saying that you need that type of pressure, but I had no options. I can't opt out of this diet ever. So when people are opting into really restricted or difficult or usually presented as mindful. It's just mindful. You have to be present for it. Ways of effectively restricting your food intake. It's no wonder it doesn't stick over time. What we're trying to do in fitness protection is get rid of a lot of the boom bust thoughts about when it comes to running so that you can make this habit something that is good and makes you feel good and does good for you. And there's a place for it in your life year round. And hopefully we'll be drawing in experts that'll help make the same thing happen with food. Because a lot of the things that I did, food scared me for a long time too. This could hurt me. This could make me sick. This could keep me in the bathroom for 3 days, and I don't want to miss on three more days of my life. And from going from there to a place of relative freedom with it and then relative comfort out in the world, that was such a huge process. And when I look at other people just sort of casually doing this without some of the tools that I was given to make it second nature, I'm like, well, no wonder it doesn't stick. And so if ever I've said like, you can go, and I know this has been a contentious phrase, like, you can't change your system of eating based off a book and a Pinterest board. A book and a Pinterest board are very useful support mechanisms, but I truly don't think it is enough because it was nowhere near enough for me.
Definitely not for me either. Yeah. Yeah.
Is it possible? Maybe it wasn't possible for me, and I can't predicate a system or, tell everyone it's possible. It just didn't work for me with a straight face with something that I'm selling.
Yeah. When I was a freshman in college and I was toying around with the idea of losing weight because I knew that everyone thought I should, and I thought I should, I tried to do Weight Watchers online for a really long time because I was too ashamed to actually go anywhere in person and admit that, like, I wanted to, that I cared, right? So I was just like, well, I'll just, I'll do this from the privacy of my dorm room and I'll, track my food and whatever. I was paying for a subscription to their, like, fancy tools, which at the time were very fancy. And did not work. I didn't start losing weight until I got over myself and went to the meetings every week because accountability. Like, it's terrifying to have someone weigh you every week. And that did it for me. That is what I could never have done it without this whole system around me to reinforce all of the good things and to make me fear what was going to happen. And that's a very different kind of, you finding a way to make your diet work for you. But weight loss and Weight Watchers, again, is widely agreed to be one of the, like, better, more sustainable, more holistic ways for adults to lose weight.
Sure.
Absolutely. And I don't want to just, like, endlessly dig on them. I do want to endlessly dig on this children bullshit because no. But Weight Watchers for adults, it is not the grapefruit diet by any means. And I don't mean to equate the two things, but I absolutely needed every single resource they had. I absolutely did. And so did everyone else who was participating. And I went to meetings throughout college and in the church basement in town. I would, like, kind of sneak off and go. And sometimes I forgot to take my name tag off afterwards when I went back to the dining hall. And that was pretty embarrassing. Because again, showing that you care, can't do that. You have to care, but in secret.
No. It's like I had a friend, she's like, I'm not fat enough that it would be acceptable for me to say in public that I'm on Weight Watchers. But I'm not thin enough that I can eat whatever I want in public and not feel judged.
That is such a good way of putting it, and I'm very familiar with that, with feeling boxed in like that. Yes.
So it's not unusual that you couldn't keep the Weight Watchers, and again, not to beat up on Weight Watchers, but it's not sustainable without the Weight Watchers framework. It took me 18 months to learn how to operate independently without even support groups to manage the celiac diet. So is it any wonder that when you look at all that was necessary for you, like take the structure away, take the infrastructure away, of course change was going to slowly happen. Like that to the power with the Biggest Loser. Recently, and this will be in the show notes as well, all this backlash has to not only the reboot, but also to the Weight Watchers app is coming out just a few weeks after the New York Times published findings from a government-backed study performed by the National Institutes of Health tracking 14 former Biggest Loser contestants over time and found that all but one of them regained all of the weight they lost on the show within 6 years after appearing on the program, meaning that not one of the habits they picked up was totally sustainable. What's more, 4 of those contestants actually ended up weighing more than they did at the beginning of the competition. The show's format pushes contestants to lose weight quickly through intense dieting and really intense exercise, which actually slowed down contestants' metabolic rates to the point that their metabolisms did not recover even years after a time on the show had ended. None of these people lack willpower. They were not given tools for lasting success. And you remember I talked about, I think I might have pointed this once in the past, but like my husband lost a whole lot of weight too quickly, and that while continuing to run, not letting his joints adapt. When I talk about adaptations of tendons, joints, and ligaments, that's exactly what I mean. It wasn't that he lacked willpower. What he was doing was hard on his body. These people were doomed to fail as soon as they left the house. You were doomed to fail as soon as you left the Weight Watchers infrastructure. I was not necessarily doomed to fail because what I was taught to do, the approach that I was taken, was absorbing a new way of doing things. And yes, we can make it about the have to for the rest of my life, but it was nothing like I was reprogrammed. And that is not really what Weight Watchers does. It doesn't reprogram the way you approach, think about in your relationship to food, which is effectively what happened to me when I worked one-on-one with a registered dietitian for those 18 months. So going back to the point about contestants' metabolic rates being impacted in the long term after leaving the house, there's a story. I remember hearing this. It was an interview with Matt Damon, and I heard it in an airport around 2003. He described the fallout from some crash diet he undertook to get his first big leading role, which was in Courage Under Fire, I think, as a soldier addicted to heroin. He said something I never forgot. That was nearly a decade ago. He would have filmed this in like 1993. That was nearly a decade ago, and my metabolism still hasn't recovered. My endocrinologist may never release me. I'm still on medication. That story, he told that to Rolling Stone. That story is what got him his next big break. The Rainmaker, Francis Ford Coppola, heard that and was like, that is dedication. I want that guy. Would that story horrify bias if a woman told it. As long as she loses weight, who cares how? Who cares about her adrenal gland? Because that's where that's the point piece it all comes back to. When you're trying to impact metabolic change, you have to do so without freaking out, stressing out, or shooting your adrenal gland. That's why it has to be a slow, gradual process, adopting habits that you can continue, ways of doing things that can continue. This is why dieting doesn't work. It's why crash dieting doesn't work. Adopting a new lifestyle absolutely can. I've been accused of beating up on vegans, but I'm like, what works when you're adopting from normal to vegan or normal? Sorry, I shouldn't say like that, not to make them abnormal, but whatever you're doing, adopting a system of eating like vegan or halal or kosher. I've watched friends go through trying to become kosher and or adopting kashrut into their homes. And I'm like, that is so hard. So hard. Serious respect for anyone who has it and can maintain it out in this world. It's possible to do all of those things and have a healthy relationship to food. But the way that they go about these changes of learning and adopting one step at a time is vastly different than what any other weight loss type of idea is promoting. And it's absolutely not what happens in The Biggest Loser. It is possible to live on quote unquote restricted diets. What's really hard is restricting for this express purpose of weight loss. That is doomed to fail. You'll meet people who've been vegans or have practiced kashrut their entire life. I mean, it's not, don't want it to be like it's really easy or it's really hard, but with no major backlash. It has nothing to do, and it should have nothing to do with weight loss. It's a way of doing things.
And no one's getting at you about accountability, I'm sure. Like, no excuses and no, that's not the style. That's not the approach from what I understand.
I've not seen that. I cannot imagine. I'm thinking of my two friends that converted and how it was really hard because they would ask questions like, oh, I think you just broke a rule. And they're like, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
So it was really tough for them to be like making sure they're doing everything right. And then when they would see a rule broken, they're like, I'm the food police. How did that happen? And, but it is confusing when you watch someone break a rule. And I kind of get it. That's the worst it ever got. But on the whole, when you're trying to adopt it, you're going to ask a lot of questions, but that's different than accountability. If someone that is new to the system is around you, that you're in the panopticon now, you might act a little differently, but it's not going to like freak you out or worry you or make you change like all of the things that you're doing in that moment. So I say all of that just to be like, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to want to lose weight. It's okay to not want to lose weight. It is entirely possible to adopt a new system of eating and not develop an eating disorder categorically. It's possible to lose weight without needing to adopt an eating disordered ways of eating or exercising in order to get to where you want to go. You would not know that though from watching The Biggest Loser. The things that make for great TV make for terrible choices in the long term in this one body that you can't replace and an adrenal gland that once broken may never function again. But we're not going to go into the science of that today.
I'm really looking forward to the conversations that we're planning going forward about what health really means. And we've been mulling over that. We've been talking about it for a long time, and we're going to talk to people who know more than we do about what is this word that gets thrown around so readily. That's because that's the stick that everyone gets a bit like, oh, everyone on The Biggest Loser, well, they're doing this for their health, right? They're going to be so much healthier now. Yeah, well, no.
Nope. Well, until they get injured and they can't run for a while. And when they're injured and they can't run for a while and they feel behind on their marathon training and behind on their weight loss plan, and like their eating is contingent upon them working out because they're counting calories and they're matching. Well, now I have to eat less because I'm running less. Then all of that is doomed to fail. So I think that before we even start bringing the experts on to talk, we need to spend a couple of episodes talking about what we do, how we do it, what our approach is to fitness, and because I think I made it really clear and I've said it a lot and people are always confused by it. I don't need to know what you weigh. I don't need to know very much about you to help you adopt these good, healthy habits. And it's not a euphemism for weight loss. You may lose weight, you may not. I don't really care. I'm here to make sure that you develop a habit that you can keep for the rest of your life and without the trauma that I needed at age 6 to really make it stick. When you're old enough and you have agency and desire, there are a lot of little things that get in the way, and we want to make sure that we have a very gentle plan that works for people at every stage in their running journey, so that if you're in rebuild, you don't feel like you're behind, or you're not panicking about like I need to get here, and if I don't get there, then I will never achieve my goals in any way, shape, or form. Meeting you where you're at with no fear, shame, or trauma necessary to move forward, because we know you don't lack willpower, and we know you don't need accountability. What you need is a safe space to move through this world, and we are going to give it to you. So we'll talk about that before we go back to what health looks like. Let's talk about, I think we need to spend an episode talking to people in rebuild and talking about what works for them, and then maybe move on to people in maintain as we get into the fall racing season, since there are several people like you who say that they want to adopt that 10-week marathon ramp and have been very surprised to see how effective it can be.
I'm so looking forward to talking to our people.
Because I want you to have this habit for life. If you do one of my plans and walk away, or didn't come back to it, or didn't adopt a new way of running, then that's always going to make me a little sad, because hopefully I would have taught you what easy effort feels like, and that, why would you do more than easy effort ever? Easy effort's fantastic. But if you're here doing this the way that we are, and you're still running 4 months in, 5 months in, there's something to be said for that. Then maybe, just maybe, we have found something sustainable, and nothing else. You got the reset button, you've got the tether, you've got a way to get back on track, and the support to do it with none of the shame when life gets in the way, and none of the fear or the anxiety that comes along with, oh my gosh, I'm behind. You're never behind here.
Yeah, that's right.
We ain't racing each other.
That's right. And for this to be a place that you want to be, and a habit that you want to have for the rest of your life, I think that is also, you're not here because you have to be, because you need someone to beat you up in order to make you do the thing. You want to be here, you want to do it, and you want that safe space, and we're here for that. For you. Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
All right, everybody.
You're coached, you're loved. Let's all win at the week ahead. And don't forget to sign up for Coach Sarah's brand new newsletter. She will be taking it over officially the first week of September. Bye now.